I thought, he began, his voice a low tremor that cut through the clinking silverware of the restaurant, that you were going to confess your feelings for me. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and unbelievable. My world, which had been spinning on a predictable axis of deadlines and awkward encounters, suddenly tilted. My boss, Edwin Marshall, the man whose job I was seconds away from quitting, the man Eurostrade spent months simultaneously admiring and avoiding, thought that I was in love with him. The reality was so much more complicated, so much more terrifying. Because in that moment, I realized the crushing truth wasn't about my feelings at all. It was about his. It all started with an obsession. A very specific, very unprofessional obsession with pectoral muscles. Eurostrade V always been drawn to Themer Euro's broad, well-defined chests that seem to wage a silent war against the confines of a tailored dress shirt. And as fate would have it, my boss, Edwin Marshall, was a living, breathing embodiment of my fixation. The man was less a CEO and more a classical statue brought to life, forced into bespoke suits that hugged the contours of his torso in a way that should have been illegal. Every single time he stood at the head of our conference room, his voice a low, commanding rumble as he issued directives, my gaze would inevitably betray me. Like a mesmerized insect drawn to a brilliant, dangerous flame, my eyes would drift down from his face to the expanse of his chest. That fateful Tuesday was no exception. We were trapped in the sterile purgatory of a quarterly budget meeting, a special kind of hell filled with pie charts and soul-crushing projections. Edwin was pacing back and forth in front of the screen, his gestures sharp and emphatic. With every movement, the fabric of his crisp white shirt pulled taut across his chest, and just like that, I was gone. My mind had checked out, soaring into a daydream where those powerful pecs were the undisputed protagonists. I was so utterly lost in my reverie that I didn't Eurostrade T register the sudden, suffocating silence that had fallen over the room until his voice, sharp as a shard of ice, sliced through my thoughts. Johnny, would you care to explain what you find so utterly fascinating? I snapped back to reality. Edwin was standing still, staring directly at me. One perfectly sculpted eyebrow was arched in question, and his arms were crossed over Euro's well, you can guess what they were crossed over. The entire room, a jury of 20 of my peers, swiveled their heads in my direction. My brain went into overdrive, desperately searching for a plausible lie, a corporate-speak excuse. But my mouth, that treacherous, unfiltered idiot, decided to take a different path. It blurted out the unvarnished, mortifying truth. Your pecs, sir, I heard myself say, my voice a squeak. Fair Eurostrade rear Euros Euros impressive. A silence so profound descended upon the room that I could hear the frantic drumming of my own heart. It was a silence broken only by a strangled snort from Calvin, my deskmate, and the officer Eurostrade's resident town crier. Someone coughed nervously. Edwina Eurostrade's face, previously a mask of professional inquiry, froze into an expression of utter disbelief, as if I had just confessed to embezzling company funds. His jaw clenched, and I could have sworn I saw a vein pulse angrily at his temple. Focus, Johnny, he said, his voice dropping to an arctic temperature. This is a business meeting, not a bodybuilding competition. The meeting shambled on, but for me it was over. I was toast, burnt toast. My colleagues shot me a variety of looks, ranging from amused pity to outright horror, as if I had just performed an impromptu striptease for the board of directors. Calvin leaned in, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. Dude, you literally just told the CEO you were Euros trade, re-ogling his chest. Do you have a death wish? I hissed back. Shut up. Sinking so low in my chair I was in danger of sliding onto the floor. My face felt like a furnace. I was already composing my resignation letter in my head. Dear Mr. Marshall, I apologize for being a professional creep. Euros trade LL show myself out. Forever. When the meeting finally, mercifully ended, I made a break for the door, but his voice stopped me dead in my tracks. Johnny, a word. He didn't even look up from the tablet he was holding, but the tone was unmistakable. It was the vocal equivalent of a guillotine being raised. I shuffled over to his side, feeling like a 5-year-old caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Care to explain yourself? He asked, finally lifting his gaze to meet mine. His eyes were the color of steel, sharp and unforgiving. Euros, I didn't mean anything by it, I stammered, my eloquence deserting me. I just Euros, I admire your Euros physique. Aesthetically, you know, like gym goals. His expression remained unchanged, a granite mask of disapproval. This is a workplace, Johnny, not a locker room. I suggest you keep your aesthetic admiration to yourself. Yes, sir. Absolutely. It won Euros trade tea happen again, I said, nodding so vigorously I risked whiplash. He dismissed me with a curt, final nod, and I slunk back to my desk, where Calvin was waiting like a vulture circling a fresh kill. So, he said, grinning like a fool, you and the boss got a little something going on now. I wanted to staple his mouth shut. Calvin, I swear to God, I snapped, hammering at my keyboard to feign productivity. I was just appreciating his commitment to fitness. Euros trade S not like Euros trade M into him. Ovo. Sure, he said, dodging the wadded up piece of paper I threw at him. Euros trade S why you went full heart eyes in front of the entire department. I bet he Euros trade S either secretly flattered or actively plotting your termination. I groaned, dropping my head into my hands. The worst part was I didn't have a thing for Edwin. Not really. I mean, objectively, the man was gorgeous in that untouchable Greek god sort of way, but he was my boss. He was all starched collars and stern directives. He probably slept in a 3-piece suit. My type was more Euros approachable, less likely to have me frog marched out of the building by human resources. The day crawled by, and I was just beginning to think I might survive when the universe decided to deliver another swift kick to my dignity. I was in the break room, attempting the simple task of pouring a cup of coffee, when Edwin walked in. He Euros trade shed his suit jacket in favor of a fitted polo shirt that, God help me, made his chest look practically 3-dimensional. My coordination abandoned me. I fumbled the mug, and hot coffee cascaded everywhere, a significant portion of which landed directly on his pristine white shirt. Jesus, Johnny, he snapped, instinctively grabbing a handful of napkins. The wet fabric clung to his torso, outlining every single ridge and curve of the very muscles that had gotten me into this mess. My eyes locked onto the sight, my brain rebooting. I was a deer caught in the high beams of a very well-built, very angry truck. Euros trade and so sorry, I gasped, grabbing another wad of napkins and dabbing uselessly at his shirt. It was only after a few frantic pats that I realized what I was doing. I was, for all intents and purposes, groping my boss. My hands froze midair. I snatched them back as if his chest were electrified. Oh God. I didna euros trade T mina euros ir euros trade M not trying tor euros Edwina euros trade S face was a thundercloud of pure fury. What is wrong with you? He growled, his voice low and dangerous. First the comment in the meeting, and now this. If I didna euros trade T know any better, ir euros trade D think you were actively trying to get yourself fired. No, I swear, iter euros trade S not like that. I babbled, my mind working at the speed of a dial-up modem. Ir euros trade M just clumsy. Iter euros trade S been a bad day. It will never happen again. He glared at me, wiping at his shirt with far more force than was necessary. You are on incredibly thin ice, Johnny. Keep your hands and your eyes to yourself. Understood? Yes, sir. Crystal, I whispered, backing away so quickly I nearly tripped over a chair. He stalked out of the room, leaving me standing in a puddle of coffee and shame. Back at my desk, Calvin was smirking as if he euros trade D just won the lottery. Heard you treated the boss to a private wet t-shirt contest. Spill the details. I am going to murder you in your sleep, I muttered, slamming my laptop shut. It was an accident. I am not into him, or whatever insane narrative you are euros trade re-spinning in your head. Right, he said, leaning closer, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. Farter euros trade S why you are euros trade re currently blushing the color of a fire hydrant. Just admit it, man. You are euros trade V got a crush on Mr. Pex. I do not. I snapped loud enough for a nearby coworker to glance over. I just appreciate a good physique, okay? Iter euros trade S not personal. Ir euros trade D stare at your pecs if they weren't our euros trade T, you know, completely non-existent. Calvin clutched his chest in mock pain. Ouch, bro. Right in the feelings. But seriously, you are euros trade re-digging yourself into a hole. Keep it professional, or you are euros trade re-going to get fired. He was me euros trade T wrong. Edwin already had me pegged as some kind of workplace deviant. One more misstep, and ir euros trade DB updating my resume. The rest of the afternoon was spent in a state of high alert, my head down, avoiding Edwin euros trade S path as if he were radioactive. But every time I blinked, the image of that coffee-soaked shirt, those perfectly defined muscles, and his furious glare burned itself onto the back of my eyelids. By 5 euros trade clock, I was ready to flee the building, but Calvin, ever the tormentor, had one last jab. So, you gonna send the boss an apology fruit basket. A circumflex euros sorry for the coffee bath. P.S. Love your chest. A circumflex euros trade I hurled a stress ball at his head. I am never speaking to you again. He caught it effortlessly, laughing. Whatever you say, man. Just try not to dream about him tonight. I didn't euros trade T dignify that with a response. But as I grabbed my bag and headed for the elevator, I couldn't euros trade T shake the unnerving feeling that I had just lit a fuse on a bomb I had no idea how to defuse. The image of Edwin euros trade S face, a confusing mixture of anger and something else I couldn't quite decipher, lingered in my mind. And for reasons I refused to closely examine, my heart was racing. Edwin euros trade S office door felt less like an entrance and more like the maw of a beast. I stood outside, my palms sweating, mentally preparing myself for the lecture that was surely coming after yesterday's euros trade S series of disasters. His email that morning der euros my office. 10:00 a.m. sharp. A circumflex euros hadna euros trade T exactly inspired confidence. I knocked, each rap against the wood sounding like a nail being hammered into the coffin of my career. "Come in," his voice called out, clipped and devoid of warmth. I stepped inside. He was seated behind his massive desk, his tie perfectly knotted, his expression as unreadable as ancient hieroglyphics. The room smelled of expensive leather and that cologne he wore, a scent that was both intoxicating and, at this particular moment, terrifying. He gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit." I perched on the very edge, feeling like a schoolboy summoned to the Principal Eurostrade's office. "You wanted to see me, sir?" He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Johnny, we need to have a serious discussion about your behavior. Yesterday was completely unacceptable. The meeting, the incident in the break room. Do you have any idea how inappropriate you are, Eurostrade been?" My stomach twisted itself into a painful knot. "I do, sir, and I Eurostrade am genuinely sorry. The coffee was a total accident. And there euros the other thing the euros I didn't mean it the way it sounded. I just euros I trailed off, realizing that finishing the sentence with I'm pathologically obsessed with your chest probably wasn't Eurostrade going to help my case. "You just what?" he prompted, his eyes narrowing. "Because from my perspective, it appears you are either incapable of maintaining a professional demeanor or you are deliberately trying to cross boundaries." No, I Eurostrade am professional," I blurted out far too loudly. "I mean, I have a great deal of respect for you. I just euros got distracted. It won't Eurostrade happen again. I swear on my career." He studied me for a long moment, and I squirmed under the intensity of his gaze. Distracted, he repeated, the word tasting like poison on his tongue. "By what, precisely?" My mouth opened, then snapped shut. "Your pecs, you fool!" My brain screamed, but I wasn't that suicidal. Just a euros work stress. Brain fog. You know how it is. Edwin clearly wasn't a Eurostrade buying it. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the polished surface of his desk. "This is not our gymnasium, Johnny. I am your boss, not your personal fitness inspiration. If you cannot manage to keep your eyes focused on your work, then you and I are going to have a much more significant problem." "I get it, sir. Our Eurostrade LLB better," I said, my voice cracking with humiliation. I was trying to salvage my job, but my traitorous brain was fixated on the way his shirt stretched across his broad shoulders. "Focus, Johnny. Focus." He let out a long sigh, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Fine, but I expect you to prove it. No more incidents. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir. Crystal clear," I said, nodding like a bobblehead doll, desperate for this ordeal to be over. I stood up, ready to make a clean escape, but my foot snagged on the leg of the chair. I lurched forward, my arms pinwheeling wildly for balance, and thin euros, oh god, nor euros, I crashed right into Edwin. We went down in a chaotic tangle of limbs, hitting the floor with a muffled thud. My face slammed directly into his chest. For one delirious, suspended second, it was like landing on a pillow sculpted by angels, euros, soft, yet incredibly firm. I was in a strange, mortifying heaven. Then reality came crashing back. I was sprawled on top of my boss, my nose buried in the very pecs that had caused all this trouble, and he was completely frozen beneath me. "Johnny." His voice was a strangled mix of shock and pure fury. His hands clamped onto my shoulders, shoving me off him with surprising strength. I scrambled backward on my hands and knees, my heart hammering against my ribs. He sat up, his face flushed, his shirt untucked, his tie askew. For the first time, He looked completely unraveled. What in the hell was that? I tripped. I squeaked, holding my hands up in a gesture of surrender. It was an accident. I swear, I was my Euros trade tea trying to Euros. Oh God, I am so sorry. An accident, he snapped, getting to his feet and yanking his tie straight with jerky, furious movements. You expect me to believe that you just happened to fall face first into my chest after everything thought Euros trade has happened. Our Euros trade am clumsy. I was practically begging now. I didn't mean to. Look, our Euros trade am no to Euros. Our Euros trade am not into you or anything. I just fell. Edwin Euros trade's eyes flashed with a dangerous light, and for a terrifying second, I was sure he was going to fire me right there on the spot. You are unbelievable, he muttered, his voice low and threatening. Get out. Now, I didn't Euros trade tea need to be told twice. I was out of that office faster than you can say unemployment benefits. The days that followed Edwin Euros trade's sudden disappearance from the office were strange. The entire building felt off-kilter without his sharp, commanding presence. Meetings became listless, and the ambient noise level dropped. Calvin, naturally, had a theory. I bet he Euros trade's in hiding, he declared, tossing a stress ball from one hand to the other. You finally scared him off with your relentless peck obsession, Johnny. The poor guru Euros trade's probably entered witness protection. I rolled my eyes, but a knot of anxiety tightened in my gut. What if he was right? What if I had finally pushed him too far? He's probably just busy with a high-level project, I muttered, more to convince myself than him. Not everything revolves around me, you know. Calvin smirked. Sure, but you have to admit, Eater Euros trade's suspicious. The man has never missed a day of work in his life. And now, right after your little office wrestling match, poof, he Euros trade's gone. The rumors grew more outlandish with each passing day. Edwin had quit. He Euros trade D eloped. He Euros trade D joined a remote monastery. The truth, when it came, was far more mundane and yet somehow more concerning. His assistant, Lisa, dropped the bomb by the water cooler. He's in the hospital, she said quietly. Caught a really nasty bug. He should be back next week. Relief washed over me, immediately followed by a wave of guilt. What if my relentless, idiotic behavior had stressed his immune system into submission? After work, I found myself in a grocery store, impulsively assembling a fruit basket. Nothing says our Euros trade am sorry for being a walking HR violation quite like a pineapple and an assortment of citrus. The hospital was sterile and quiet. I found his room and knocked softly. When there was no answer, I pushed the door open a crack. He was there, asleep in the hospital bed, and Roman IV dripping fluid into his arm. He looked at her Euros human, paler than usual, his hair slightly mussed, but even in sleep, he was clutching a folder of papers. My heart did a strange little lurch. His blanket had slipped down, exposing his shoulders. On pure instinct, I moved to pull it up. I leaned over, my fingers just grazing the soft fabric, when his voice, hoarse but sharp, cut through the silence. Johnny. I jerked back as if our Euros trade D been burned, the blanket still clutched in my hand. He was awake, his eyes blurry but focused on my hand, which was hovering perilously close to his chest. I was just fixing your blanket, I blurted out, dropping it like it was radioactive. Nothing else. I swear. He pulled the blanket up to his chin, his expression wary. What are you doing here? I gestured to the fruit basket on the nightstand. I heard you were sick. I brought you 30 euros to, say €euros trade. I'm sorry for everything. His gaze shifted from the basket to my face. You didn't need to do that, he said, his voice softening almost imperceptibly. And you don't need to adjust my bedding. I wasn't, I insisted, rubbing the back of my neck. Look, I know euros trade v been weird. Euros trade noter euros trade not into you. Adjust euros. I trailed off, realizing I was about to dig the hole even deeper. Just what? He prompted, pushing himself up slightly. His hostile gown shifted, revealing a tantalizing glimpse of his collarbone. I forced my eyes back to his face. I just euros. I like guys who are fit, I admitted, the confession feeling both stupid and liberating. Not in a creepy way. Euros trade as an aesthetic appreciation. Your build is impressive, so my brain just kind of euros notices. But euros trade as not personal. Desperate, I fumbled for my phone and pulled up a random fitness influencer euros trade as video. See, I watch this stuff all the time. Your euros trade register euros, a real-life version of that. He stared at the screen, then back at me, a look of profound confusion on his face. So you are euros trade saying you stare at my chest because it reminds you of a YouTube video. Exactly. I nodded, immensely relieved. Euros trade s not about you. Euros trade s just about muscles. He exhaled a long, slow breath. That is euros marginally less disturbing. But you still cannot behave that way at work, or here. He gestured pointedly at the blanket. Keep your hands to yourself. Got it? No touching, I promise. He seemed to almost smile. Now go home, Johnny, and try not to cause any more scenes. That hospital visit sparked an idea. If I couldn't stop admiring his physique, maybe I could build my own. The next week, I joined a gym near the office. And euros trade s where everything changed. I was midway through a clumsy set of bench presses when a familiar figure walked into my line of sight. It was Edwin, dressed in a fitted tank top, a towel slung over his shoulder. My jaw nearly hit the floor. Relax, Johnny, he said, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. Your euros trade not the only one who lifts. He watched me struggle for a moment. Your form is off, he stated, not unkindly. Your euros trade flaring your elbows. Your euros trade injure yourself. Before I could protest, he was behind me, spotting me, his voice a calm, steady presence in my ear. Push through your chest, not your shoulders. His proximity was electric, sending a jolt through my system that had nothing to do with lifting weights. That day marked the beginning of an unlikely routine. Several nights a week, we became gym buddies. He was a patient, if strict, teacher. He corrected my form, pushed me to lift heavier, and we fell into an easy rhythm of workouts and light banter. It was nice, existing in a space where we were in our euros trade boss and employee, but just two guys. One evening, emboldened by a good workout, I finally came clean. My euros trade on my case about finding a partner, I grumbled, scrolling through a dozen missed texts. She wants me to bring home a nice girl. Joke's on her, though. Euros trade gay. Edwin euros trade expression shifted. It was a subtle change, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes before his professional mask slipped back into place. I see, he said, his voice suddenly neutral. Euros trade euros a lot to navigate. The warmth between us evaporated. He packed his bag quickly, muttering about an early meeting, and left me standing there, feeling cold and confused. Did I misread him? Was he not okay with it? The easy camaraderie we Eurostrade built felt like it had shattered into a million pieces. My brother Calvin called that night, offering me a lifeline. He was starting his own business and wanted me to join him. It was the perfect out. A chance to escape the confusing mess Eurostrade made at my current job. A chance to get away from Edwin. And so I made my decision. I would quit. I asked him to dinner, needing to do it face to face. Which brings us back to that dimly lit restaurant, the air thick with unspoken things. I took a deep breath, ready to deliver my resignation speech. Eurostrade am planning to leave, I said, the words feeling like stones in my mouth. My brother needs me for his new company. Edwin Eurostrade's face fell. The soft smile he Eurostrade worn all evening vanished, replaced by a look of profound disappointment. War Eurostrade quitting, he said, his voice flat. Thought Eurostrade's what this was about. And then he said the words that changed everything. Johnny, I thought you were going to confess your feelings for me. My brain screeched to a halt. Confess Euro's feelings, I stammered, a nervous laugh bubbling up. You thought I was going to say Eurostrade am in love with you. Edwin did Eurostrade laugh. His expression was dead serious, tinged with a vulnerability I had never seen before. Yes, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I did. Because I like you, Johnny, more than I should, given that Eurostrade am your boss. But I hoped you felt something too. The air rushed out of my lungs. I was staring at him, my mouth hanging open, as my heart executed a series of frantic backflips. Were Euros like me? I croaked. Like me? Yes, he said, his eyes searching mine for a reaction. I have for a while now. The way War Eurostrade saw you. Clumsy, brutally honest, infuriatingly distracting. I kept waiting for you to give me some kind of sign. But then you say War Eurostrade quitting. And Eurostrade am left wondering if Eurostrade completely misread everything. It was as if a lifetime of puzzle pieces suddenly clicked into place. His lingering glances, the way he Eurostrade helped me at the gym, his strange reaction when I came out to him it wasn't Eurostrade disapproval, it was something else entirely. You are Eurostrade a walking disaster, Johnny, he said, and this time, a real, genuine laugh broke through. But somehow Eurostrade's endearing. I kept telling myself to remain professional, but then Eurostrade do something ridiculous, or Eurostrade grin at me in that way you do Euros, and I was just Euros gone. My face was on fire, a mixture of shock and adorning, brilliant joy. All this time, I thought he saw me as a nuisance, a liability. But he Eurostrade seen something else, something more, and as I looked at him, really looked at him, past the sharp suits and the intimidating title, I saw not just my boss, but a man who was laying his heart on the line for me. And in that moment, I knew that my carefully laid plans to quit, to run away, had just been completely and wonderfully obliterated. So, there it is. The man I accidentally assaulted multiple times, the man whose chest I was certifiably obsessed with, just confessed that he Eurostrade's been falling for me all along. My entire world has been turned upside down, and for the first time, I have no idea what comes next. What do you think of Edwin's sudden confession? Was it the plot twist you were waiting for? And more importantly, What should Johnny do now? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of a story, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next.